You can taste the honey. It's subtle, very subtle, but it's definitely there.
It's good. Excellent.
Still has a little dry kick to it from the hops, but. Okay, so this is the beer that we made on the last show. This is it's an ESB, which stands for extra special bitter. Typically, an ESB it has a pretty strong hops flavor to it. It's an English style ESB is very low carbonation. Again, the American version of this, Red Hook ESB, is very good. It's one of my favorite commercial beers to drink. We'll crack it open. It should be a darker color, but not kind of a dark copper color to it. And this was an extract beer, so remember it will be a slightly darker than it would be if I did all grain. But I wouldn't expect this to be too dark. Or too light anyway. The style is not a light beer.
You can smell the aromine hops. I mean, what did you add there in the last?
It had 3.5 ounces of hops total. I think I had Williamette and Goldings.
It's good.
And I actually cut down the hops quite a bit from what the recipe called for. Not quite a bit, a little bit. But
what was it, about 5 ounces? Or was
it was 4.5. Oh, I'm sorry. You said no. Here, I got a whole other bottle.
It's all right. It's really very good.
But yeah, it has a nice little kick to it, but it's not too much.
It's much more bitter than you'd think it would be, but...
Not too much. I don't think it's overly so.
No, not so much. Very good.
Yep. All right, so now we are going to add, this is called a Warflook tablet, and it's made from Irish moss, which is a clarifier. Will help to cause what's called a hot break in your beer. You just drop one tablet in, and it'll help to clear your beer. Then this is a copper wort chiller. After we're done with the boil, it will we'll run water through it and it'll cool it down. We'll go ahead and put that in just to let it sanitize. Okay, we have close to 10 minutes left in our boil, so we'll go ahead and add our last ½ ounce of hops, of our pellet hops. We'll just drop it in there.
Those pelletized hops at this point in time are added for aroma, not really for flavor, but more for aroma. Yeah, because
when you add it at the very beginning of the boil, I explained this a little bit in my first show. At the beginning of the boil, the aroma will boil off, but it will add bitterness to your beer. At the end of the boil, when you add it, it'll just be adding aroma and not very much bitterness to it. So we'll just let that sit there for about 10 minutes. Bring back to a boil, and then we'll run our hose through it. Stir it up a little here. You can see there's a lot more hot break in it.
Yeah.
That freaked me out the first time.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, I was like, what is that? Because all grain has some, but not usually that much. Looks good. So now we're all done with the boil. We let the first round of hops set for an hour. The second round has been sitting for 10 minutes. We've added our Warflook tablet. We've got our wort chiller in there. It should be boiled down to close to what we want our volume to be. So I'm going to turn off the propane. And Caleb, would you mind turning the hose on? Just turn it on real low to make sure it doesn't shoot out. That's good.
Any hair?
That's good. Okay, we'll let this sit it takes probably about 20 minutes to let it cool off. Then we'll add it to our fermenter and drop the yeast, and we'll be good to go. Okay, now we've cooled the wort down to below 100 degrees. It was at 93 degrees when I checked it. We're going to show you how to use the auto siphon. First, this thing it's a cool little gadget to kind of show how to do it. It's very good for bottling too, but it's very easy to sanitize. You just drop it in your bucket full of sanitizer and just pump it, and it'll just pump the sanitizer right through it. Okay, and then you just pump it and it'll pump all of it out. Okay, Now I will hook on this little thing. This is it's a siphon sprayer. It helps to aerate the wort that we're going to add on. It's very important to aerate your wort because after it boils, most of the oxygen has left the wort, and the yeast need that. So I'll hook this on. There we go. Okay, and then here, let me drop it back in here. Okay, and then I'll drop this in. Just want to set that on the ground there. And then we'll just turn this on. Okay, it'll start going. We're going to pump a little bit of hops through it, but that won't make any difference.
That is a handy time saver, this siphon starter.
It is. And this is just helping to aerate your wort. That is going to be a light colored beer. Yeah, just take that. You know, that's what
it's supposed to do.
Yeah, you got to get it pretty high.
More pressure on it, I guess.
Yep. And you can aerate it just by dumping it. You can pick the whole thing up, but 5.5 gallons or so, it's a little heavy. It's easier just to dump it in. And again, it's not a big deal if you get some of that hops in there.
Most of that's going to settle to the bottom along with your yeast.
Yeah. It'll all settle out in the end. Flavor saver. All right. And then we will, I'm going to get a sample of it. Take a hydro. This is a thief we're going to use to take a hydrometer reading. First we'll sanitize that. See what our gravity is. This will help us to determine the amount of alcohol that's in it. Also we can see the color, what color we ended up with. There's a lot of hops and stuff floating around in there. But you just drop your hydrometer in there. And that's pretty good. We are at 1.04, which is exactly where we should be, right in that range where we want to be. I wouldn't recommend, some people do it, I wouldn't recommend adding your sample back in there because it can cause contamination, and it's only that little bit.
I like to say that we give this part to the beer gods.
That's right. Yeah. For my homies. You want to explain the hydrating yeast? Or?
I can, you can.
Go ahead.
All right. With most dry yeasts, what we're trying to do is basically make those yeasts come back to life. They dry them either through a process of cooking them down very slowly, like you would in an oven, or they will just dehydrate them and then allow them to dry in a cake form. This particular kind, I don't know how it is, but we're using a Safe Lager S23, which is just a general lager yeast. I've used it before. It's excellent yeast, very vibrant. We'll be using a dry pack plus